We've been spending the last, this is what, week 3 of our friendship series, talking about the impact of friendship, talking about life changing friendship. And today we're going to be talking about 5 doors that we use to access the impact that we make in friendship. Again, if there's anyone who's just has their prayer points, Valerie can pick that up. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 people who just finished. Let's pray while we before we begin. God, we thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity, for this word, oh God. We ask, oh God, that you just open up our hearts, that we learn something new, learn something amazing, and that we walk out of here better people. All to your honor and glory in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So, life-changing friendship. Here we go. I'm going to walk us through a couple of review items for the series so far, and then we'll get into the stuff that we're talking about today. So, part 1, recap very quickly. We said that life-changing friendship is not always a conscious spiritual decision, but it is always a spiritual event. And what we mean by that is that it's typically not something you start out say, you know what, I want you to be my life-changing friend. It's not necessarily a conscious decision, but every time you meet someone that you become life-changing friends or that they become your life-changing friend, God ordains that. God works that out. God makes that happen. So don't take people for granted. That's pretty much the gist of that. Because you never know. God brings people into your life, just may seem really random, but the people in your life who end up being life-changing friends, you will realize that it's not like you went and say, I'm going to go find me a life-changing friend today. They just kind of happen, right? And so that's always a spiritual event. Here's point number 2 from part 1. It's life-changing friendship when no one has an upper hand in the relationship. In other words, it's self-sacrificial for the friendship. We looked at David and Jonathan in the Bible, and we talked about how Jonathan was this prince, and David was pretty much a nobody. And when Jonathan met David, Jonathan did something amazing. He took off his royal garments and gave them to David. And that was very symbolic. What he was trying to communicate was, I am not more important than you. I love you, and I want you to feel that you are not less than me. In other words, he wanted to be the kind of friend where, you know how you meet people and you're friends and you're cool, but then every time you're with them, you feel like maybe you're less than them. Jonathan was trying to say, you know what? I don't want you to feel that way. Every time we're around, everywhere you go, I want people to know that you and I are on the same level. I think that's amazing. So that's what life-changing friendship does. Life-changing friendship makes sure that no one is feeling less than the other. I think that's amazing. Here's point number 3 from part 1. True friendship will last more than a generation and impacts more than the people in the friendship. When you really have life-changing friendship, when you really have friendship that matters, that really connects, friendship that really goes beyond yourself, that really changes somebody else's life, more than likely that friendship will last more than one generation and it will impact more than the people in that friendship. So in other words, when you have life-changing friendship, it is not only for you. You don't get to pick life-changing friend. You don't get to have life-changing friendship and then just be the only beneficiary. When you have life-changing friendship, guess what? Your family benefits from that. When you have life-changing friendship, your kids benefit from that. When you have life-changing friendship, your future generations will benefit from that. Remember what happened between Jonathan and David. So they have this amazing, intense friendship. Jonathan dies. About 25, 30 or so years later, David wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I don't know, maybe he was just missing Jonathan. He says to his people, he says, is there anyone alive who's related to Jonathan, my friend? I mean, Jonathan's dead, like long dead. And David is still yearning for that connection. And David goes out of his way to find Jonathan's long-lost kid in the middle of nowhere, brings him back to the palace, and says, for the rest of your life, I want you to have dinner with me. Just to put that in context, back in the day, I mean hundreds, thousands of years ago, when a kingdom conquers another kingdom, you kill everybody. Okay? That's typically how that works. You don't want anyone else from that family, right, rising up. You don't want any kind of that you eliminate all possibilities. But because of this life-changing friendship, that's what he does, right? David goes out of his way to find somebody in Jonathan's lineage, brings the person into the palace and says, for the rest of your life, I want you to have dinner with me. So that was part one. The gist of part one. It was awesome. Part two, let's have a recap from that. We looked at actual research. We looked at actual statistics. We looked at actual data. And we realized, we found some research that said that the effect of social ties on lifespan is twice as strong as that of exercising and equivalent to that of quitting smoking. In other words, when you have strong, good, healthy social ties, when you have wonderful friendship, when you have people in your life who care about you, the effect of that is twice as strong as exercising. When I saw that, I was like, whoa, I don't have to go to the gym anymore then. No, I'm just kidding. Right? I do. Right? But think about that. Isn't that amazing? And it's equivalent to that of quitting smoking. That's how much the benefit of life-changing friendship is on your life. That's why this is so important. That's why we had to talk about this. Here's another point that we got from part two. Among the people in the study, there was a study conducted, who were in old age, a lack of social connections more than doubled the risk of high blood pressure. More than doubled the risk of high blood pressure, raising it by 124%. For comparison, having diabetes raised the risk of high blood pressure by much less, 70%. So, having diabetes raises the chances, your risk of high blood pressure by 70%. Not having quality friends, not having people in your life, social connections that are healthy for you, that are good for you, that raises your risk of blood pressure by 120. That's crazy. That's wild. That's why we are so bent on creating good community and good friendships here at Ignite. Let's see, what else do we have for part two? Oh, yes. Being a life-changing friend is sometimes simply about allowing your friends to be just that for you. Sometimes just receiving the help makes you a life-changing friend. In other words, becoming a life-changing friend isn't always about being the one that is giving the friendship, that is giving the act of love. Sometimes just receiving the act of love from someone who is coming out of their way to give it to you, that in itself may make you the life-changing friend. Here's what I mean by that. Let me go deeper here. If someone is trying to do something for you, and I know I'm guilty of this, you know how we always do now, I'm good. Really, I don't need, I'm moving, but, you want to help me move? No, it's cool. It's not too bad. Too bad. Sometimes we just got to take the help. Just take the help. Why? Because if someone is offering and you receive the help with love, with appreciation, then you deposit something in their heart that plants a seed that says, wow, I actually matter. I didn't know I matter that much. I didn't know my little offer of half an hour to help you move matters that much. But the way you're reacting to this, the way that you're appreciating this, the way that you're receiving this, wow, thank you. It's almost like, thank you for letting me help you, because now I walk away from that situation, I walk away from that help, and now I feel better about myself, and now I want to do that more. So in other words, you become a life-changing friend. You change my life simply by receiving my help. Interesting. We also learned in part number 2, the life-changing friendship is about being someone who has faith for both of you for the times your faith is depleted. Last week, we looked at a story of a paralyzed man whose friends, just 4 friends, break open the roof somewhere where Jesus is preaching. They break open the roof because the place is too packed. They can't get in, so they break open the roof and lower this dude all the way down to the front of Jesus. And there's a verse there that says that Jesus saw their faith and he acted for the man. In other words, that guy was probably at a situation where, as a paralyzed person, in that society, in that time, he was probably pretty beat up mentally, emotionally. Even now, you'd be bent up. But because of the faith that his friends had, Jesus saw that and was moved with compassion. That's part of why we're doing the friendship prayers today, because sometimes we may have friends who may not be telling us much. We may have friends who may not be expressing much, but they are going through it right now. And sometimes when they are going through so much, they may not have enough courage to pray for themselves. Our collective prayer matters so that God can look at our faith and move on their behalf. Okay, that's why we're doing that today. A couple more and we will get into today. Life-changing friends provide a steady reference point in the midst of our anxiety. The analogy there was this. Picture this. We're in this room. The guy is being lowered by his friends to the front of Jesus. He's on his back. Everyone is looking up, but they see his back. In that moment, I bet you that man was going through a lot of anxiety because he's feeling like he's disrupting the service. He's feeling like he's a burden on everyone else. But as he's looking up, all he sees are his friends. All he sees in that moment are his friends. As the chaos is going on down there, people are probably shifting like, what the heck is going on? Who is that? What is that? You're not allowed to do that. That's my roof. All of that. He can't see all of that. All he sees are his friends. And that brings us to the second point. And that is that sometimes in life, before you see Jesus, all you see is your friends. Sometimes before you have that whole, wonderful experience and you're like, oh my God, Jesus is my friend. I love this. I love Jesus. Before all that happens, man, sometimes you just need some quality people in your life who just love you. Sometimes you just need people in your life who just want to be there for you. Sometimes before you get into all this, all that spirituality and relationship with God and all that stuff, sometimes all you need is just some good old-fashioned, basic, life-changing friendship in your life. And I'm hoping that through this series, you and I get to become that life-changing friend for somebody else. Because this stuff matters. That friendship is great, but the life-changing part, that's where the meat really is. So that's a recap of part 1 and part 2. Today, we get into part number 3. And we're going to be talking about 5 doors through which you make a positive or literally tear down a friend. You're either making a positive impact through these 5 doors, or you're literally destroying or tearing down a friend. And there are 5 of them. The first one is the words you say. The words you say. So we're going to talk about Job. Job is this dude in the Bible, just to give you some context here. Job is regarded as a stellar guy. I mean, top-notch, righteous guy. And I'm not just saying this. His friends didn't just say this. God was saying this about Job. God was like, yo, my man Job, he's the man. I mean, God was like, there's just no, this guy is the standard. This is what God says about Job. But then you see, the enemy of your soul is always trying to look for ways to tear you down, to bring you down, to destroy your credit, to destroy your character in front of people who matter. And that's what the devil was trying to do. So God says, you know what? All right. Because the devil said, yeah, he's only nice to you, God. He's only a righteous person. He only prays because his life is good. This can actually apply to many of us. Because the truth is, many times we find out that we are very, we know how to give a thanksgiving to, oh, thank God, when we find parking, when the train stays for us, when we make the train, when we get a bonus check, when the gig we've been waiting for comes through. Like, thank God. We know how to do stuff like that when things are going right. But what happens when things are not going right? When your life seems like it's in total chaos? Are we good at being that person? So this is what the devil proposes. The devil goes before God and says, yeah, Job, I know you think he's the man. I know you think he's all perfect. But it's because his life is good. Look, he's a millionaire. He has kids. He has a great family. He's living the life. Of course, he's going to be able to praise you. Let me take some of that stuff away and see what happens. And God is like, I know this guy. He's going to stay committed. He's not just wanting a relationship with me, God, just because things are going great. He also knows how to say thank you when things are not going so great. Boom, so the devil strikes. Kids, gone. Wealth, gone. Friends, gone. I mean, everything just overnight, like in one fell swoop, just boom, done. Things catch on fire. Actually, like quite literally, like things burn down. And this is Job. Job chapter 2. This is now when the story kicks off. Job chapter 2, verse 11. Job is in depression at this point. Job has lost everything. When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, when they heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go sympathize with him and comfort him. That's some good friendship so far. So far. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. Guys, okay, just picture a friend of yours who is living on, I don't know, the 25th floor of some crazy penthouse in Manhattan. I mean, living large. I mean, like, he is the guy or she's the gal that you go to, that the party's always over there, everything is great. And then you hear that they lose everything. And in fact, they were sitting at the corner of Allen and Houston. Hadn't taken a shower in a couple of weeks. They have no money, and they're looking through trash cans. This is the sight that the friends come to. And they see Job from afar, and they just start crying. Just to give you context, they just bust into tears crying. And for 7 days, they're so shocked. They're so incredibly taken aback by the suffering, they have no words to say. So they just sit there. And so far, this is great friendship so far, because the Bible says that they met in agreement. They all, hey, yo, you hear what happened to Job? Yo, you hear what happened? Yo, we got to go out there, man. This is what happened. They collected themselves together and went out to see Job. So far, so good. 7 days of saying nothing, just sitting with him. Sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes just being there for people, just physically being there, that says a lot. That does a lot. When someone's going through a rough time, sometimes just being there says a lot. You don't always have to have the right words to say, but just sometimes just being there. And again, so far, they have this right. And then they open their mouths. And then they open their mouths. And it all comes downhill from there. Look at what Eliphaz says. And I'm thinking, because after 7 days of contemplating, why would a guy like you who's living large, Job? What up, Jay? What you do? Who'd you offend? What crime did you commit? After they've thought about this for a while, this is what comes out of his mouth. He said, when your children sinned against him, meaning God, he gave them over to the penalty of their sins. But if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. Bro, I thought you were my boy. I thought you knew me. I thought if anyone could vouch for my character, it'd be you. But here you are, just because you don't have an explanation for my suffering, you automatically assume that it's because I'm in sin. You automatically assume that because I've done something wrong to God, that's why I'm suffering. Don't you realize that sometimes you could be in perfect standing with God, but God has to trust you with some pain? Don't you understand that sometimes, even when you're in right standing with God, you are the perfect person for God to entrust with some pain. Let me deviate for a moment. Because I'm actually going to preach about what I'm going to talk about at some time. But let me just touch it for a moment. Here we go. Don't forget this. Sometimes, God has to be able to trust you with some pain. Let me say that one more time. Sometimes, God has to be able to trust you with some pain. And here's what I mean by that. It's one thing when a lot of people go through pain, one of the first reactions is to think, this God thing ain't even right. When people go through struggles, one of the first reactions is, man, I don't even know if this God thing is even worth it. See, they have a point, because pain is not fun. And when you have a God that loves you, the automatic thinking is, he should be able to protect me from this pain. But the reality is that sometimes, because he loves you, because he trusts you, because he trusts your heart, because he can depend on you, he actually places the reputation of heaven in your hands. That means that what he was doing with Job was to say, I will bet my name. I don't think you understand the gravity of what I'm saying. I will bet my reputation on one dude. And he will go through all this pain. And I know that even in all that pain, he will still be committed to me. Let me ask you a question. Can God do that with you, or you and I, are we flaky? You know what I'm saying? Because if we can't even be real with the God that provides the oxygen that we breathe, we definitely are going to be flaky with those friends who maybe are going through some stuff, who can't really be the friends we think they ought to be to us. You can't even be a life-changing friend to human beings if you cannot maintain some life-changing friendship with God, your creator. That was Eliphaz. A few chapters later, the next friend opened his mouth. This one is crazy. This is crazy because Zophar went in. I mean, this is a guy who lost his children, lost his family, lost all his wealth. Job at this point is covered in boils. I mean, everything has gone to craps. And Zophar says, surely you know how it has been from of old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth, which is the laughter, that's what that means, the mirth, the laughter of the wicked is brief. Yo, are you calling me wicked, dude? Is that what you're saying right now? Because he's trying to tell me that the laughter of the wicked is brief and the joy of the godless lasts but a moment. Yo, I know I'm going through it, but are you trying to call me wicked right now? Because you're supposed to be my boy. But let's skip that, right? Though the pride of the godless person reaches the heavens and his head touches the clouds. For real, are we on this? Are we saying the same? Are we talking about the same person right now? He will perish forever like his own dung. Those who have seen him all day will say, where is he? Just like I'm looking at you right now, Job. Like a dream, he flies away, no more be found, banished like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will not see him again. His place will look on him no more. His children must make amends to the poor, and his own hands must give back his wealth. The youthful vigor that fills his bones will lie with him in the dust, just like you sitting here, Job. Though evil is sweet in his mouth, and he hides it under his tongue, though he cannot bear to let it go and let it linger in his mouth, yet his food will turn sour in his stomach. It will become the venom of serpents within him. He will spit out the riches he swallowed. Yo, are you trying to say I swallowed riches? Because I'm listening to you right now, sitting in this pile of dust, covered in boils, lost my children, lost my wealth, and I thought that the words that you would say to me would be kind words. I thought that the words that you would say to me would be words of encouragement. But you shut your mouth for 7 days. I thought this was going right until you opened your mouth. And it goes on and on and on. God will make his stomach vomit them. He will suck the poison of serpents. His fangs, the fangs of an adder will kill him. He will not enjoy the streams, the river flowing with honey and cream. I mean, verse 21, It says, nothing is left for him to devour. His prosperity will not endure. In the midst of his plenty, distress will overtake him, and the full force of misery will come upon him. By this point, I can't even read. I mean, it goes on. I can't even read this anymore. Because Job is so crushed. How could they say this to someone who is going through so much pain? How could you say that to someone who is in distress? The words you say are access points for you to affect your friends, to either build them up or to literally tear them down. Here's the second thing. The first one was the words you say. Number two, the promises you keep or don't keep to your friends. And here we're talking about Joseph and the cupbearer. To put in context, Joseph goes to jail for a crime he did not commit. This is the gist of the story. Goes to jail for a crime he did not commit. He's in there and he meets a couple of people. Hi, can you just imagine? Okay, I'm hoping this does not happen to us, but just imagine you're sitting in detention, sitting in jail, and the president's aides, right, comes in as well for something, two of them, and now you're buddies with the president's aides. Now, he does them a favor because they have dreams. And Joseph interprets these dreams and gives them the accurate interpretation and tells the cupbearer and the baker that of their fate. So the baker is going to get killed. This is what Joseph tells him. In 3 days, you're going to lose your life. That's just the meaning of your dream. But you, Mr. Cupbearer, you're going to get your position back. You're going to get reinstated into the government. This is what he tells the cupbearer. And he tells the cupbearer, when you get released, please don't forget me. Let's read that scripture. Genesis chapter 40, verse 1 to 8. It says, sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph and he attended to them. And after they've been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker, they had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of his own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. Joseph is a good guy. They're sad. So he asked the Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him, why do you look so sad today? We both had dreams, they answered, but there was no one to interpret the dreams. So Joseph interprets their dreams, like I said, tells them what the dreams will be. Joseph asked the cupbearer for a favor. I'm going somewhere with this. He says in Genesis chapter 40, verse 14 to 17, he says, when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison, because I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here now I have done nothing to deserve being put in this dungeon. Just imagine the hope that Joseph is feeling in this moment. You're in jail for doing something, you're put in jail for something that you didn't do, and then you meet someone who is friends with the president. You tell this person that in 3 days they're going to be free to go back to the president. And you ask them for a simple favor. Put in a good word for me, bro. When you get out there, just say something for me. And the cupbearer, as sure as the day was predicted, he gets released. He goes back to the president. Does he remember Joseph? No. Forgets the guy who told him about the dream. This cost Joseph 2 more years in prison. 2. I mean, even if the sentence was 10 years, and he had served 8 years as of this conversation, it wasn't necessarily just the fact that it was 2 years, it was the hope lost. When you don't have hope of getting out, 2 years is fine. When you're in a prison and they say it's 10 years, you're freaked out. But when there's no hope of getting out, you make it through 8 years. 2 years certainly sounds like, yeah, I can do this, I think. But then when you know someone who is in 3 days supposed to do something to get you out, suddenly 2 years is so long. It's so hard. Because you can't believe how someone will let you down so hard. It cost Joseph 2 more years. Here's my good news to you today. Here's the encouragement for you today. The problem that Joseph was supposed to solve was not ready yet. Oh, I got to go in for this one. When Joseph came out 2 years later, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had a dream. And it was that dream that Joseph interpreted. That was the dream that triggered the cupbearer to say, oh my God, I do know somebody. 2 years ago when I was in jail, there was this dude, Joseph, something like that. He interpreted, maybe he can do this. It was that dream of Pharaoh's 2 years later that triggered the release of Joseph. But guess what? If Joseph had been released 2 years earlier, there would be no Pharaoh's dream and there would be no promotion for Joseph. In other words, Joseph would have been free 2 years ago, but that would be it. That'd be it. There'd be no remember the story, right? If you don't know the story, let me give you some context real quick. Joseph eventually becomes the prime minister of Egypt. Pharaoh basically says, what? You interpret this dream and this dream is going to save our economy? You should become prime minister. I don't care if you've been in jail. You should become prime minister because there's no one as wise as you. You came up with this interpretation. It's working out. You should run this program. Oh, welcome, Mr. Minister of Agriculture and Prime Ministership, whatever. Like that. From jail to prime minister. From jail to prime minister. If he had been released 2 years before that, he'd come out of jail, but then just like everybody else, he'd have to start picking up his life from the ground up, from nothing. Do you see what is happening? So it seems on the surface as though his friend forgot him, but God was at work. And I'm here to encourage you that your life may be going down the shambles, so it seems right now. It may look like people are letting you down. It may look like the promises that people made you are not being fulfilled. It may look like people forgot you, but I'm here to tell you that when it is the right time, God will make those things work to pass in Jesus' name. Here's the third thing. So the first one was the words you say. Second is the promises you keep or don't keep. Right? The advice you give. We're talking about 5 doors that you make an impact, positive impact on your friends, or you could literally tear them down. Here's number 3, the advice you give. So something is happening here in 2 Samuel chapter 13, verse 1 to 6. The advice of friends is so important. Here we go. In the course of time, I'm going to read this to you and then we'll talk about it. In the course of time, Amnon, the son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, the son of David. There's some crazy stuff going on here, okay? Because I can't even believe, this will get you in jail today. This is some crazy stuff, right? He is in love with his half-sister. Yeah, wild, okay? This is what's happening. So, verse 2. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. Now, Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shimeah, David's brother. Jonathan was a very shrewd man. Let me pause there for a moment. Remember what I talked about in part 1, about how it is important for you to pick your friends right. Because when you pick your friends have access to be able to influence you in a way that you have no idea. You gotta pick your friends right. You gotta pick your friends right. Don't pick friends just based on who you have the capacity to influence. Always remember, your friends will influence you. So Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab. And Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, "Why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Won't you tell me?" And Amnon said to him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Go to bed and pretend to be ill," Jonadab said. "When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'I'd like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare food in my sight so I may watch her and then eat from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, "I'd like my sister Tamar to come and to give me some special bread in my sight that I might eat from her hand." Innocently, David thinks nothing of this. And if you jump to verse 10, this is crazy. Tamar comes in the room. Amnon says to Tamar, "Bring the food to me here in my bedroom so I may eat from your hand." And Tamar took the bread she had prepared and brought it to her brother in the bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and he said, "Come to bed with me, my sister." "No, my brother," she says to him, "don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You'd be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. This is wicked. Say to the king, and he will not keep me from being married to you. Just do this right." But he refused to listen to her, and since he was stronger than her, he raped her. She gets raped. That advice that Jonadab gave to Amnon, it derailed the life of Amnon and eventually cost him his life. Because eventually Absalom killed him in revenge. Not just that, it derailed Tamar's life because she never recovered from that. That advice nearly destroyed David's life, like his life itself. Here's your takeaway for this, folks. Don't forget this. Unimportant people can cause very important events to happen in your life. Unimportant people can cause very important events to happen in your life. For the rest of the Bible, we hear nothing else about Jonadab. His one scene in the Bible was to give terrible advice that destroys everybody else. Almost destroys in fact, this is part of what destroys the lineage of David. One person getting bad advice from someone who is not even that important. Here's what I'm trying to get to you. As a person, your life is created by God, and your destiny is orchestrated by God. You have to be very careful about how you get advice and who you get advice from, because if your life gets derailed, of course, it's not just about your life that gets impacted. We're talking about everyone around you who God has a plan for through your life. That's why you and I have to stay tethered to God. You and I have to pick our friends right. And you and I have to hold each other accountable. That's what community does. When you're part of a community of people who are healthy for you, who are always looking out for your best interest, somebody should have come to say something in this scenario, but they were isolated. And he got that advice from somebody who wasn't so important. Here's point number 4. The fourth door. Your self-control over self-interest. We're almost there. Self-control over self-interest. And the case study here is my boy Jay. Judas. To put things in context, Judas is one of the disciples, one of the 12. These 12 disciples are the closest people to Jesus, okay? They go everywhere with him. They see all his miracles. These 12 are the ones who are going to take the gospel out to all the nations. And one of them, how do you spend 3.5 years with Jesus? And this happens, because this is what happens. Matthew chapter 26, verse 14 to 16. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest and said, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you. Like, what prompts this? Like, I can understand if, like, they had an argument. Like there's a scene before this, and Jesus and Judas are in the streets pushing each other, shoving each other into the mud. Talk about, like, I don't like your scarf, and I don't like your scarf, and you're a terrible person. I can understand if that happened, and then Judas was like, you know what? I'm done. And then he goes to the priest. But no, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Just wakes up and goes to do this. What would you give me if I deliver him to you? So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. And from then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Now, you're probably wondering, 30 pieces of silver. I did some research on this. This ranges, apparently, I know it's a wide range, ranges from about I don't know, $90 to about maybe $3,000. This is what the life of Jesus is worth to Judas right now. Okay. Some people say it's no more than $600. This was not really about the money, as you can see, because this was more about self-interest. It wasn't the money, because when Judas realized what happened, he tried to return it. It was his self-interest. He was his insatiable self-interest, his insatiable self-focus. Look at what happens in Matthew 27, verse 3 to 5. When Judas, who had betrayed him, when he saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse. He was taken, seized. He was struck with remorse. And he returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. He says, I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. And they say, what are you talking about? What is this to us? That's none of our, how you feel about what you did is none of our business. That's your responsibility. You turned on your friend. That's all on you. We got what we wanted. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left, and he went away and he hanged himself. The guilt was too much. He went and hanged himself. It was never about the money. Because if it was about the money, he probably would have returned it, okay? And he probably wouldn't have hung himself. That self-focus was uncontrollable. You cannot be a life-changing friend if your focus is only on you. You cannot be a life-changing friend if you don't have the bandwidth, the capacity, the habit of taming your self-interest. You can't be a great, positively life-changing friend if you are obsessed with yourself all the time. Because part of being a life-changing friend is about being other-obsessed. It's about thinking about the other person all the time. And if you are both life-changing friends to each other, then what happens is that you're both thinking about each other all the time. What he did cost Jesus his life. Literally. Here's the fifth and final one. The prayers you pray for your friends. We've talked about the words you say. We've talked about the promises you keep, your control, your self-control. We've talked about a bunch of the advice you give. The stuff that makes the most impact potentially is the prayers you pray. Because you see, anyone can give good advice. Anyone can be there for you when you're suffering. People can give you, can say the right words to you. But it takes a special type of friend to take you into consideration in prayer. Like to go to God on your behalf and actually pray for you. That's a different level of friendship. And that's what we're going to do today. And that may seem like a casual activity, but make no mistake. Sometimes God needs you and I to step in on behalf of somebody else. because they can't do it by themselves. When you're going through a lot, haven't you noticed this, folks, that when you're going through a lot, when you are struggling, when your life feels like it's under, it's very hard for you to pray sometimes. Haven't you noticed that sometimes when you are so overwhelmed, you don't even know where to begin in this prayer? That's why you need friends in your life who can pray for you, who can pray with you, who don't have to wait for you to come say, I need prayers, before they get on their knees and pray to God for you. Because if that verse that we read last week is true, and it is, that Jesus looked at the faith of those 4 friends on behalf of their paralytic friend, and he acted because of that, that means that God can look at our faith, you and I, and he can act on behalf of our friends because of us.